Welcome back to the channel. My name is Blake, and today I just want to have a heartfelt conversation with you about the infinite banking concept and the process of becoming your own banker. And the reason for that is I think that there needs to be just a conversation had about what this really means and what it can mean for you in your life. And there's a lot of misconceptions out there and things that will deter you from truly understanding how powerful this concept is. And the infinite banking concept is just that. It's a concept. And it's something that a man by the name of R. Nelson Nash created many years ago, and he's no longer with us, unfortunately. But he left us with a lot of nuggets that will help us along this path of the process of becoming your own banker. So the infinite banking concept is just that. It's a concept created by a man. And the concept was banking and how we can benefit from it, and he calls it infinite. So that means that there's an infinite amount of possibilities with this concept that he created. And one way to understand that concept, or the process of putting the concept into play, is what he called becoming your own banker. So there's two separate things. One, we have this concept, which is from R. Nelson Nash, having gone through some things in his life and been forced with some hard decisions that he had to make along his journey of already becoming his own banker, and he just didn't know it. He had already been using a vehicle which we know of today as whole life insurance with a mutual company that pays a dividend. He had already been using that in his life, just not in the capacity that he began teaching people to become their own banker. So the idea is that he came across some financial difficulty in his life, and this vehicle that he had been using could help him not only get out of that financial bind, but no longer have to be in that bind that he had figured out that was a lifelong bind at that point. It was a form of slavery, a form of being beholden to a system that none of us have any control over. That is the banking function and the banking system. The banking function is the movement of the money in our lives. And it really comes down to, are you in control of the movement of the money in your life? So the process of becoming your own banker is the lifelong journey of us trying to control the banking function, okay? So there's two different things. You gotta make sure you understand this. The infinite banking concept is a concept that R. Nelson Nash created. And then the way that he figured out to implement that concept is a process that he called becoming your own banker. Now, becoming your own banker can be done with any kind of asset, okay? So I know that you will hear about a whole life policy with a mutual company that pays you a dividend. And in Nelson's mind, and many people believe that today, that is the best vehicle to practice this process. But there are plenty of other assets that you could use to implement the process of becoming your own banker. The question is, does that asset class, does that bank account, does that Roth IRA, does that 401k, does the piece of real estate or the portfolio of real estate that you own, does the portfolio of stocks and bonds that you own, mutual funds, you name it, all of these different assets, do those assets give you the same benefits that practicing the infinite banking concept can give you with a mutual company through a whole life policy that's going to pay you a dividend? So that's the distinction, okay? We've got an idea that we are now trying to put into play through our whole lives. It is a process. We're trying to put that idea into real work in a real life with a mutual company that you have a whole life policy with a mutual company that's going to pay you a dividend. So is there a better way to practice that process with another asset class? And in Nelson's mind, there was not, okay? So what's the most important things that we can take from this idea of becoming our own banker and this concept that he created called the infinite banking concept? Well, controlling the movement of your money. That's the first thing we talked about. And he called that the banking function. So when you spend money and you earn money, are you ultimately in control of that? And are you benefiting from that movement as much as possible? That's what he began to understand in his personal life, and thus began teaching people after he had implemented it for many years and began to perfect it. He began teaching other people how to do that. So that's a very distinct thing we need to understand, is the banking function applies to all of us, regardless if we want to practice this process of becoming our own banker or not. The banking function is at work, okay? And the question is do you have control when your money, your paycheck, your revenue from your company's business is deposited into whatever account you use, and then you go put that into another form of an asset because we're told we need to do so? Well, along that process, are we still in control? Really ask yourself that. And what does it mean to be in control? Well, do you control the movement? Is there a certain time frame that you have that you can access funds? Is there a penalty or a tax associated with moving the funds around? Do you have to sell the asset in order to get access to the funds that you need when you need it? So that's what happened with our Nelson Nash. He came to a point in his personal life where he needed capital, but his capital was tied up in investments that he had made that were not liquid. And the main investment was real estate. He had timberland because he was a forester, which is a long-term thinking asset class, right? And he also had other forms of real estate, just pieces of land and different things that he owned. But all of those pieces of real estate are illiquid when you need access to capital. And the only ways that you can get access to the quote unquote liquidity that you have in it, or the equity that you have, would be in the form of additional debt, right? You refinance the property, so you take out more debt, which is going to cost you more money, or you sell the asset, which then you lose the benefits of owning the asset that you bought it for in the first place. So look at all of that as questioning whether or not you are in control of the asset. Are you in control of your wealth? Are you in control of your capital? And your capital, we've been taught, because I'm right there with you, I've been taught to put my hard-earned capital in all those asset classes that we've discussed. And I've learned after a couple of decades at this point on how I'm actually not in control of the majority of that process. Because if I own the real estate, if I own the mutual fund, if I own the stock, the 401k that's got my capital in it from working a hard-earned income job, wage earning job, that money is tied up and there's certain rules I have to follow to access it. And then I'm going to ultimately pay penalties and taxes to access what is my hard-earned income. So we really need to understand what we're doing when we put our capital, which is our hard-earned income, whether it's a job via a W-2 or a contractor of some kind, or you own a business, okay? All of those are different forms of earning income or revenue. And the question is are you getting the most benefits out of earning that revenue and putting it to work however we've been taught to do that? And that's something that Nelson Nash learned, and he graciously put into a very understandable form for all of us to this day. And he did that in a book that's called Becoming Your Own Banker, and a seminar that he taught that was originally something that he traveled the country, okay, over 2 days, a Friday and a Saturday, teaching people this concept. And what he was really teaching us was behavior and mindset. And do we control this banking function? And he was trying to get us to understand that. So his concept of the infinite banking concept, and then the process of trying to implement that concept, which is the becoming your own banker, he was teaching that in person for many years. During his teaching, he decided to create a book. And the book is titled Becoming Your Own Banker. And that book is a supplement to his seminar. Okay, so his seminar is available today in the form of either DVD and physical copy, or you can watch it digitally. But the important thing there is that book was never meant to be read on its own. It is a supplement, as he says, I believe on page 3 in the introduction of the book, that this book is intended to be a supplement to his seminar. We're supposed to be reading that book as we watch the teaching that he gave for decades of his life, in person. He was in his 80s as a man, traveling with his wife across the country trying to teach us about this concept. And that concept truly almost has nothing to do with a whole life policy with a mutual company that pays a dividend. It just so happens that that vehicle, that asset class, is what he deemed the best to implement that process. So I want you to really think about that. Weigh the merits of his process, of his concept that he created on its own, without any asset class in mind, okay? Really do that. Think about what it means to control your finances. Think about what it means to not have control of your finances and not have access to your hard-earned capital when you need it most, which is what most people do when they dip into a 401k or they take a loan against various other assets that they've taken, which then creates another financial burden on you, which is another interest payment and principal that is due on a certain day that you have no control over. So you needed the access to those funds that you worked hard for, but you didn't understand that when you got access to it, it was going to take all these different hurdles that you had to jump over. And actually, maybe even put you in a worse financial position than had you just left it in there, which is what I believe they really want you to do. See, if you just leave your stocks in the accounts like they tell you, whether it's S&P 500 or an individual stock with a company, or you just leave that capital that you put in the 401k that's at work in whatever class that they've given you to accept, because you only have certain options, right? They are banking on you never wanting to take that capital out of there because you're going to lose. You're going to get taxed and penalized for just getting access to what you already worked for. And the vehicle of a whole life insurance policy with a mutual company that pays a dividend has none of that. It's tax deferred, but you're never going to get rid of the policy, which means you're never going to pay tax. And you can take a loan on it and you decide when you pay the loan back. The insurance company is not going to send you a bill every month on a certain day for a certain amount of interest and principal. So really think about what it means to control your finances. Really think about what it means to not have access to the capital that you've already worked for when you need it most. Because when life happens, what are you going to do? Most of the time, almost all of the time, we're going to go into more debt, which just increases the difficulty of the financial situation that we're already in. So remember that. That's why I believe most people misunderstand IBC and becoming your own banker, is because they always want to look at it through the lens of whole life insurance policies. And while that may be the best vehicle to implement his concept and work out his process in our lives of becoming your own banker, that's not the only asset class that you can use, okay? So if you find a better asset class, so be it. I'm happy for you. But there's a lot of bodies of work out there that have proven that the whole life policy with a mutual company that has paid a dividend, many of them for over 100 years, some of them for over 120 years, right? So that's dependability. It's not a guarantee, but it's dependability. So think about that. All those asset classes that we discussed, don't all of those asset classes have the risk of the balance or the asset becoming worth less? And you can't control that at all, can you? Now, can you guarantee that any of those asset classes won't ever decrease in value? No. I know you can't. I've been there myself. There is no other asset class that you can control the way that you can control the whole life insurance policy with a mutual company. And yet, the insurance company is really doing the work for you because they have a track record and have been dependable for 120 years in paying a dividend. That's profit, okay? Any of those stocks that you have, any of those assets that you have those been profitable for over 100 years and you have proof for it? I challenge you to find it. And I would encourage you to get involved in the comment section of this video and let me know what you think. Please go do the research for yourself. Please come to this idea, the infinite banking concept, and the process, remember, two separate things, come to them without any prior contempt and come to them and judge them on their own merits, just like you would want to be judged, just like I would want to be judged. I wouldn't want anybody that knows nothing about me, that just heard something about me, to judge me in a specific manner, because you don't know. But we all do that, and it's just a form of involvement that we have in this world that we live in today. But I encourage you to do that and do it without looking at a whole life policy, because you really need to understand the concept and the process before you'll ever understand what's really going on inside the whole life policy that's issued with a mutual company that will pay you a dividend. And I keep saying that because that's important. We're not talking about term life insurance policies for sure. We're not talking about index universal life, or variable policies, okay? There's a specific vehicle that Nelson taught. Remember, he taught in person for many years over a 2-day seminar that the book accompanied that helped people understand. He taught about that vehicle. But most of his seminar was about the behavior, the mindset that we have, and the ability to control the banking function. So the human behaviors are very important. So the misunderstanding out there about IBC, it's unfortunate, but it's a part of being in the financial world, because there's so many things out there that get our attention that Nelson called noise, because it's money. We're dealing with money. We're dealing with profit. We're dealing with the ability for other people to make money and make profit, and you don't want to be taken advantage of. I don't want to be taken advantage of, and I don't want to see you taken advantage of either. So that's why I want you to take this process and this concept and judge it for yourself on its own merits before you even look at a whole life policy with a mutual company that's going to pay you a dividend. Because if you don't understand the process and this concept, the details in that policy and whatever it's going to be don't matter. Hear me when I say that. Whatever's going on in this concept and this process, if you don't understand that first, it doesn't matter what you're going to get in the form of an illustration or any numbers that you see on a page. But once you do understand this concept and you do understand the process, then the numbers on that page won't matter. Because implementing and perfecting this process and living the life that you're going to get with that process are far more important than comparing a percentage of rate of return or interest rates, which is what it all comes down to. And that's what people want to compare on these illustrations and pieces of paper with numbers on them. So really, please, I implore you, just take time to investigate what this concept and this process really mean. And then look at asset classes that might help you implement this process in your own life. And when you're ready, I know you're going to come to the same conclusion that thousands of other people have come to. And you'll want to call me, because I can help you implement that process. But only when you understand the concept and then you understand the process. Because again, we're not comparing numbers on a page. But once you understand that and the kind of freedom that you're going to be able to live and not be worried about risky investments, because all those other asset classes, they are investments. And what is an investment? It's the introduction of risk. Remember that definition. An investment is the introducing of a risk of some kind. And with the best vehicle to implement the process of becoming your own banker, you don't have those risks. There is no introduction of risk. In fact, a whole life insurance policy with a mutual company, again, that pays a dividend, that's what the insurance company is doing. They're actually taking the risk from us. The risk of loss of our lives from your earning potential and the love that you're going to give your family throughout your life, you are compensating them for that loss when they lose you. That's the only risk of loss that we're talking about. And we are now giving that up to the insurance company. So that's a whole nother video that I'm going to talk about. But the idea of leaving your family a legacy and removing that risk of loss from your loved ones at the untimely death that we all have, that is something that's prudent that we all should really consider. But again, understanding what the infinite banking concept is, and then what the process of implementing that concept, which is then called becoming your own banker, that's what's most important. And when you read his book, and you do so as you watch his seminar, you're going to learn so much more about our natural human behaviors. Okay, one thing is called the arrival syndrome, which is where people think that they've learned enough and they don't need to learn anymore. Okay, so we have these things that we deal with in this human life that may work against us. And he's trying to teach us how to not let those things work against us and ultimately be able to prosper and have freedom, and what he called a peaceful, stress-free way of living. So again, when you bring no contempt to the concept and this process, and you understand it, or you've got questions about it, call me. Go to the website, reach out. My website has plenty of other resources for you to continue your learning in addition to videos like this, but continue doing your learning. And when you've got questions, I'm here for you. Again, I thank you for stopping by today, and I hope you've gotten a lot of value out of this video, and I do look forward to speaking with you soon. Thank you.